Before we start off, if you have a question during the show, we want to hear your input is a big part of what makes the show successful, and we thrive on your energies and insights. So whether it's a quick comment or thoughtful question, or whether it's a quick comment or thoughtful question or an opinion you just have to share, please don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. And if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat button at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your super chat gets read on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We really rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead, just let us know what you're thinking anytime that you want, and hit that super chat button, and let's keep the show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you always have that method where you can go to the gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, or leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. We do have to start off though with the Lions. They hit a walk-off winning field goal to get past Green Bay Packers in a very, very, very good football game. I'm not the biggest fan of these Thursday night football games because I just think the quality of football drops, and just overall in the excitingness of the game and all that drops off. But this one was a great one, and it was a back and forth. I thought Detroit looked comfortable early, but Green Bay with a very solid third quarter were able to get more and back in the game through getting an interception on Goff and playing and Jordan Love turning it on in that second half. I thought early in this game he struggled, and honestly that first quarter was almost an extension of what we saw from the Packers offense against this Detroit Lions defense that we saw in the first game around. Just being able to struggle to get any sort of production. Production, the Packers were struggling. And then there was the sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. I have to be something that I also was discussing. Christian Watson, he's not that good, and they had an over reliance on him his rookie season. And yes, he led this game with 4 receptions for 114 yards, but he made some mistakes early on in the ball game, to say the least. He did have 4 receptions for 114 yards. He had that one deep reception, but there's drops. He has a drop issue. He's either dropping the ball or he's fumbling the ball, and and that was a problem early on. The camera kept panning to him too, and that made it funny. But yeah, Packers, their offense struggled to get some production in that first quarter, but they were able to turn it on, and then it became a back and forth ball game. We saw some good offense, some good efficient offense being played on both sides. I thought overall it was a really good football game between two really good teams, and it really came down to who had the ball at the end was gonna win. And the Lions being the Lions. By the way, you get the good and bad with Dan Campbell with his ways. There's positives and negatives, and we saw both of that in this ball game. There was a 4th and 1 deep in their own territory. They were in their own 30. Dan Campbell decides to go for it. They end up getting stopped. It gives the Packers in prime position at the 30-yard line to go in and get some points. And then which they ended up scoring a touchdown actually to make it 21. And then Green Bay, Detroit, they also had another opportunity to go for it later in the ball game with about 40 seconds left. It was a 4th and 1 where if they got the first down, they essentially won the game, and they did. And they also had a 4th down at the end of the half, a 4th and 1 that they scored a touchdown on to make it 17-7. So you get the good and the bad, and we saw some of the good and some of the bad. But it ended up the good prevailing because that 4th down that they go for it at the end of the game essentially allowed them to bleed off the entire clock. And I have to be honest, I didn't really I didn't really understand that one. I have to be honest. I didn't understand going for it, but maybe I'm just living in, I have an old style of thinking. But you already have Green Bay in such a vulnerable position there. I understand wanting the knockout blow and not even wanting to give Jordan Love a chance, because you know what Jordan Love can do. He is a good quarterback, and he's a quarterback that you should respect in that situation. Don't get me wrong. A lot of times when people make these decisions, in terms of not wanting to put the ball back in that other quarterback's hand, and Jordan Love, I think he's a good enough quarterback where if you could win it with the offense, you're gonna try to win it with the offense. Yes, I understand that, but I didn't think. And look, this is all that ended up working out for Detroit. They ended up getting the first down, so. You're probably sitting here thinking I'm an idiot for even questioning the decision, but I didn't think Detroit had much to gain from that. I thought they had the Packers in a really vulnerable position to win the ball game. I have to say, I don't know what the statistics said, but I don't know what the statistics said. The win probability if you get the first down, yes, it goes to 99.99, obviously, but you're 4th and 3. The Packers is down to 43 seconds left. The Packers, I believe, the Packers didn't have a single timeout. With 42 seconds left, you kick that field goal. There's about 39 seconds left in the game. Up 3, you kick it off back to Green Bay. Even if you kick the field goal, I would still think that the win probability is still about 96% or 95%. It's still a really, really high number, because you're giving the ball back with about 39 seconds to go with no timeouts to drive. They're probably going to have to go another 40 yards. Let's say it's a touchback from the 20. So for me, I still believe, I didn't believe the risk there was really worth it. The gain was not as much. But at the same time, it was 4th and inches, and it could have gone wrong, That's the remarkable thing about it. It could have gone wrong. Jared Goff on the handoff slips, and having to extend on the slip, barely gets the handoff into David Montgomery, or else that's, it's a complete disaster. That's a complete disaster. If Goff is not able to get that handoff off, and he was very fortunate to do so, man, the Packers are sitting pretty, because now they get the ball at about the 25-yard line or so, or 23, 24-yard line or so, with 42 seconds left, and they're having the chance to win the game. And at a worst, they're going to overtime. So, it's a big risk there, but it paid off. But I just didn't think it was worth the reward. But Dan Campbell, he's the gunslinger version of a coach. He's gonna go for it. He's the gunslinger version of a coach. They lived and died by those decisions. They died on it in the AFC Championship with a few moments where they went for it and all that. And that's just the deal. It's a big win for Detroit. It's a big win for Detroit as they're battling for that number 1 seed. This is one of their tough games remaining this season. Detroit, they have a big game coming up next week now against Buffalo Bills. That is a game that can potentially decide the number 1 seed for both sides of the conferences. You have a Detroit team battling for the number 1 seed in the NFC, and you have a Buffalo's team that's battling for the number 1 seed in the AFC. That is a huge, huge game between those two games. And then the Lions also have the Bears, the Niners, and the Vikings. So not the most easy schedule for Detroit. But it was essential that they got this win here, and now they're looking in a good position to get the number 1 seed, with the game advantage over now game and a half, depending on what we see from the Eagles. I think the Eagles have a difficult game remaining in their schedule as well. I believe they play against Pittsburgh. Yeah, they play against Pittsburgh, and then other than that, you have the Commanders. The Eagles have the Commanders. The Commanders in Washington could be a difficult one for Philadelphia. at Northwest Stadium, as they call the stadium in Landover, Maryland. Now, that can be difficult for Philadelphia. That and Pittsburgh, those are two difficult tests. Um, the rest of them is pretty manageable. Carolina, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Giants, those are all pretty manageable games for the Detroit Lion for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the number one seed is really up for fight, but I think Detroit is clear favorites, and it's really remarkable what Detroit has been able to do against high level opposition this season. This is a Detroit Lions team that is right now number one. It's remarkable that Detroit Lions is 12-1. I never could imagine that Detroit Lions being 12-1, and they're a really good 12-1. They are getting past teams that we thought are not we thought that are competitors with ease. They beat Packers in both games. They they comfortably beat a Colts team battling for playoffs. They destroyed a Jaguars team. They beat a Texans team despite throwing 5 interceptions. They completely destroyed a Titans team. The scoreline against the Vikings looked tight, but I thought Detroit was a far better team in that game. They completely destroyed the Cowboys. They limited that Cardinals offense. They put 42 past Seattle. This is a Lions team that's just so complete, and they've always had they've had a lot of injuries this season. People forget, a lot of teams when they lose a player like Aiden Hutchinson, a lot of teams can tend to fall apart when you're losing a player that's important to your defense, but they haven't missed a beat. I mean, they're sitting 12-1. They came into this game shorter hand as well, missing DJ Reader and co. What they've been able to do, I think it's a sentiment to the coaching staff, to Dan Campbell, the culture that they've created within that team is unbelievable, and it's really showing dividends. In my opinion, it's a good show of culture when you're able to suffer injuries, but you also can maintain a consistent level of winning through the team. And I saw a really good comment. The Eagles have had the easiest schedule in 2024. They can win out easier. Key win for Lions. The Eagles have had a ridiculously easy schedule. I agree with that 100%. The Eagles have had a ridiculously easy schedule.